February 18th meeting of the Finance, Taxation, and Assessment Committee of the Common Council. To confirm, are we recording? Perfect. Thank you. So for tonight's council meeting, we have the following committee members present. We have Councilmember Farrell, Councilmember Keegan, and Councilmember Adams, and myself. And for discussion, we have 3 items to go over. We have Ordinance 115124, an ordinance of the Common Council authorizing the sale of 92 Alexander Street to Benjamin Morton. Ordinance 67-112-24, an ordinance authorizing the sale of the tax map parcel located between Livingston Avenue and 3rd Avenue to the Underground Railroad History Project of the Capital Region. And then Resolution 105-9224, a resolution of the Common Council reappointing Stephen McLaughlin as a member of the Board in Assessment Review. Yes, thank you. We do not have any public comment for this evening signed up. Just want to confirm with the team. Okay. So I would like to take things a little bit out of order because we are joined by Steve here today. Steve, if you could join us up at the front here, we'll have you go over why, who you are, your background, and ultimately why you would like to be reappointed to the Board of Assessment Review. And this is pertaining to Resolution 105-9224.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Steve McLaughlin. I believe my 3rd term on the board expired in September. So this would be my fourth term. At this point, my relevant background really is my years on the board. But before that, I was a licensed real estate salesperson, and I've just always been interested in the neighborhoods and kind of attracted to what homes are going for, and just for my own self-interest as far as what my house is worth, and I just found that very interesting.
Thank you. With that, I would like to turn to committee members to see if there's any questions or comments for Steve. Councilmember Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you so much for coming in, Stephen, for your years of work on the Board of Assessment Review. I would add Steve is one of my constituents, and he's very involved in neighborhood advocacy, and just somebody that I value as a council member because he keeps an eye on things and is just aware. And it always made sense to me that he was on the Board of Assessment Review because he does, it's very thorough and cares. What I wanted to ask about, so with the reassessment this year, which the Board of Assessment Review has nothing to do with the actual reassessment process, you just kind of deal with the aftermath. We had some broader issues when it came to people understanding and all of the different pieces. And a lot of that was because there were so many, and I know that that was difficult on the Board of Assessment Review themselves. You guys put in a lot of time with that, which is appreciated. But from our end, and also understanding that there is so much of that process that is governed by state law, so there isn't many things that we can change. But with your experience in it, would you have any recommendation for changes with the process or different ways that we could help? Because there was a lot of frustration with the actual process of challenging that.
We received a lot of feedback, and much of it was the brevity of our responses, and we could lay some of that to the extreme volume we had, but typically, even when the volume is not so high, we really can't. Our approach is, based on our training, is that the numbers on the tentative assessment roll are presumed to be correct. And it's up to the complainant to show that it might not be correct. And so often, well, actually pretty often, the protest is pretty weak and unpersuasive. So we don't get into a lot of, this is, these are the reasons we find your complaint non-persuasive. And that probably is the number one thing that we heard this year as far as complaints about our responses and that brevity. And certainly I think we'll probably talk amongst ourselves to how we might make things a little bit better, maybe with phraseology, and also, of course, working with the people that have to defend our decisions, which is really the assessor's office and the contractors. Because we don't want to, if there's, we want to say this one thing is wrong with your complaint, because there's really probably many things are wrong. And we simply, in any year, we don't have time to really pick apart everyone's assessment and give them a formal reply. So we just basically say, yeah, we read your information, but we find it not persuasive, or the board disagrees. That's kind of where we have to go, and we can revisit that.
That would definitely be helpful. I know in my ward, and I think a lot of my colleagues' wards, I would say probably your neighbors too. There was particularly elderly people whose taxes went up significantly, and with the reassessment, but they were trying to navigate things on their own. We would hear reports back that they would be missing pieces that they didn't fully understand. And not that the Board of Assessment and Review can solve all of those problems, but certainly getting more feedback so that people know what they can do better in the future thing would be helpful. And as a council, we did talk about, particularly in a year of reassessment, making sure that there are support staff to help kind of alleviate some of those things that we can advocate during the budget process. Even if it's temporary help to do some things. But so anything like that that we can advocate for, whether it's in the budget process or outside of it as a council, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, of course. One thing is we have no staff people as a board. So I suppose that if someone could be loaned to us for a couple of weeks just to keep things organized, and we spend a lot of time, shuffling paper and important things that need to be done, but it does take away from what we do. Just like we spend, when we turn our work back in, we alphabetize it by street and address, because it makes it much easier for the assessor's office. But if we have someone to help, just like little things like that, that would be helpful. But just speaking, I'm going to diverge a little bit. Me mentioning the budget process made me think of it. The chairperson of the board has a lot of extra duties, and yet gets paid the same in a normal year, $3,000 as the rest of us. And I just urge the members of the committee and the council as a whole to revisit that and consider whether there should be a differential for the chair, which I'm not the chair, and I hope never to be the chair. so that's one thought too.
Thank you, Councilmember Farrell. Councilmember Keegan? Okay. Steve, thank you again for your service. Doing 3 terms on the Board of Assessment Review is quite the task, and definitely a huge volunteer effort that makes a lot of difference in our city. So we do appreciate your service, and the fact that you're here seeking a 4th term is very much appreciated. I just want to go back to the reassessment process and the Councilwoman Farrell's question, just so I can understand that a little bit more. So the brevity was the biggest feedback that I think the board heard. Do you think it's a matter of, can you just clarify, is it because you are operating within the guidelines of how to respond, that's why the responses are short, or is it more so if you had more time, we might be able to give more thorough responses, or more staff,
No,
that is?
I think certainly in this reassessment period, we wouldn't have had time. But we don't give detailed responses because one reason, I should speak for me, not the rest of the board members, but when it comes to go to a SCAR hearing, for an example, the small claims process, which is the review after ours, to be really thorough really involves a lot if we gave all the reasons why we found the complaint unpersuasive. So, like, if I think you either have to give a little or a lot or a deep analysis, which even in a light year, we don't really have time for. As I say, the burden is on the complainant, and I think sometimes, like, we just say, no, you haven't met the bar. You haven't done enough to persuade us that the tentative assessment is incorrect.
Two questions stem from that too. So, in the response cycle, going back to the complainant obviously is short. You do not meet the qualifications or what have you. Is there some form of additional tracking that the board is doing to indicate, why specifically the judgment call was made that they didn't qualify? Sorry for that noise. It's kind of scary.
We don't do any formal tracking. I mean, I could tell you, common mistakes that people make. One common mistake, for example, is they'll be looking over the tentative rolls and they see, this house is similar to mine 2 blocks over, and they're assessed for less than mine. And so they tend to pick an outlier and say, I should have the outlier's evaluation.
Right.
Evaluation.
Right.
And we say, yes, but you look closer to home and everyone seems to be assessed the same, or at least a similar manner. So that's probably what we see more often is sometimes we call it cherry picking, which is human nature. You're going to do that, but it doesn't make that assessment incorrect or unfair.
Right. And where I'm going with that question is, I think, as others have mentioned this evening, we received a lot of feedback, just as you did, about this process, and obviously a lot of neighbors and residents of the city concerned with how everything went, and then ultimately where their properties were reassessed to. So maybe it's the conversation around the lone staff situation, but maybe putting out some guidance about, hey, these are, non-acceptable answers to give back and try to grieve, right? Just maybe some additional communications and or guidance to the city would help the next round of this process.
I believe I've seen, I'm not sure, I don't think I've seen anything maybe something from the assessor's office came out this year, but I know the state Real Property Services agency has some guidelines on doing on doing your complaint. And
Yeah.
I think if people actually read that and, you know, paid heed to it, they would be, you know, really ahead of the game.
Yeah, so maybe a collaborative effort between, you know, using the state's data, the assessor's office, and then any, you know, real-life examples that the board could share to the assessor's office. I just think next round we have to do, as a collective, a better job of making sure residents are aware of the process, but also how they go about grievances and what is acceptable versus not. Because I know people did put a lot of time and effort into their grievances and ultimately were denied. They felt a little, I'm sure, not even a little, they felt defeated in the process because they couldn't reach the optimal point that they were looking for. So.
Right, and of course, there was also a lot of sticker shock because it'd been several years, and it was a period of time where properties were going up quite rapidly. And when they saw the change in the assessment, it was they were really taken aback. And we heard time again, I couldn't sell my house for that much. But then if you, you know how in the Sunday Times you usually have I think they call it deeds and deals, where it shows you the prices that sold. And for, you know, several weeks after the period, I kind of gave up after a while, but I was looking up the sale prices compared to what the new assessed value was, and 80–90% of them were selling for more than the new assessed value. So I think basically, not to our credit, but the assessor's office really did a pretty good job in spite of the fact that there was that sticker shock.
Great. Well, thank you again, Steve, for your willingness to serve our city and do this very important and difficult, should I say, difficult during the time periods that you're really busy board. With that, just want to circle back to council members. Any additional questions or comments for Steve? Okay.
Okay.
I would
Councilmember Farrell?
love to make a motion to move Resolution 105-9224 through the committee with a positive recommendation.
We have a motion of positive recommendation from Councilmember Farrell. Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Keegan. All those in favor? Aye. All right, Resolution 105-9224 moves out of committee with a positive recommendation. Steve, this will go in front of the full council for the final vote now that it's out of committee, and then hopefully, pending that outcome, you will go into your, you will have your next term for you. All right?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go back to the top of the agenda now with ordinance 115124. That's, again, an ordinance of the Common Council authorizing the sale of 92 Alexander Street to Benjamin Morton. Do we have, I know that we don't have someone here for the particular parcel, but do we have any comments from Research Council?
I will say that I believe for Brett left a comment in the supporting memorandum, which I believe states that Neighborhood Services approved the transaction and has.
Yeah, so in addition to the supporting memorandum, in the back, there's also a additional memo from Corporation Counsel that kind of describes an overview of the transaction.
Okay. I don't know if folks have had the opportunity to read this through, so I'm happy to read it now into the record. If people are comfortable. Yeah.
I think just a quick, Mr. Morton was part of the Mode to Own and Proactive Demolition program, and the additional supporting memo gives a timeline in the process, and I would just say as a side note, I think it's really amazing, and this looks like a successful way forward with some of our vacant lots and properties. This is what we want. We want people to take care of a property and make it a productive part of the community. He's been paying taxes on it. So it's not just something that I think is great to move on. I think it's actually really exciting and hopeful.
I agree. Okay. Any comments on this? Okay, I'll just echo the sentiments of Councilmember Farrell. More mow-to-own would be great to see in our city. People investing in their neighborhood, particularly this being land within the south end. It's good to see revitalization and community-driven efforts here to make vacant lots go to use. Councilmember Keegan.
Can I make a motion?
You may.
I move to move ordinance 115124 out of committee with a positive recommendation.
Positive recommendation from, motion with positive recommendation from Councilmember Keegan. We have a second from Councilmember Adams. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 115124 moves out of committee with a positive recommendation. Okay. And now we're going to move to our last ordinance for this evening. It's ordinance 67-112-24. Again, authorizing the sale located between Livingston Avenue and 3rd Street for a parcel to the Underground Railroad History Project of the Capital Region. Councilmember Keegan.
I mean, this is not a huge issue for me, but do we know, I mean, are we basically selling this to them for like $1, or was there a real property tax assessment, and are we selling it for the fair market value? Is my only clarifying question on this, because I don't really see, typically when we sell property, there's corresponding real property assessment on it, and I didn't see that for this. And again, if we're selling it less than, it's a nonprofit organization, they do wonderful work for the city, I have no issue or concern. I just was hoping for a little bit more clarity on that.
Councilwoman Farrell.
What I would say, I completely agree. It is, I think it's not just a policy. I think we have to at least endeavor to get some sort of assessment and tax map. My recommendation would be that we move forward with this with a positive recommendation and then request any supporting information. I think on a whole, everyone is very supportive of the Underground Railroad History Project and very excited about this next step in their growth. And we would love to support it, but we want to just make sure that we are being consistent and having due diligence. So maybe if we could, Jake, if it's possible to get any additional information, if there's an assessment or just something from Corp Counsel's office. Sometimes when they are doing something like this that is going to a nonprofit, they don't have this, they don't necessarily make them go through a full tax map assessment piece, but they usually have something in writing that they can share with the council.
And I would say obviously prior to the vote on Monday would be what we would hope for if we were to move forward with this.
So you could condition your recommendation on the administration providing you with the documentation that you're looking for. Or you could try to just have it withdrawn from committee by telling the council at caucus that you've had these discussions and would like to proceed that way. I think those are the two ways you could go about doing it.
Why don't, if we're ready to move, I would suggest that we move ordinance 67-112-24R, ordinance 67-112-24 out of committee with a positive recommendation with the added request of additional information from Corp Counsel's office on information. I know that that doesn't necessarily have the teeth in there that you were looking for, Jake, but I also think that on a whole, we'd really like to continue moving this forward.
Yeah, sure, and we can definitely reach out to the administration to get any of that information. Alyssa is mentioning that the fiscal amount has the amount that they're paying as $8,000, which appraised by Councilmember Conti. Or, I suppose not Councilmember Conti, presumably Conti Associates. I apologize.
So just say that back. So 8,000 is the appraised value. You're saying that it's also showing that as a sale value? Or we can figure that out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let me get back to you with the specifics for Thursday's meeting.
Okay. Keegan,
And
Councilmember Keegan?
I just wanted to note that my comments were mostly, like, we have the appraised value, but typically when we have these, the appraisal is attached. And it also is unclear if we're selling it for the appraised value or if we're selling it for less than the appraised value because it's a nonprofit. Those are really and again, it's not a concern to me. I just want to make sure that when we're voting on something as a body, we know what we're voting on. That is all I'm asking for.
Right. No, my understanding is that a lot of people are very invested in this, so we shouldn't have any difficulty getting you the information that you're looking for.
Perfect. Okay, so we do have a motion. A motion for a positive recommendation with an added request for additional information from Councilmember Farrell. We have a second on that from Councilmember Keegan. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 67-112-24 also passes out of committee with a positive recommendation. These three pieces of legislation will be voted on in the upcoming meeting on Monday, Thursday. You're right, we have a holiday, right? Yes. Oh, yes, thank you. So it would be this Thursday, the 20th, my apologies. So we will vote on this shortly. And with that, that has concluded our agenda for this evening for Finance Committee. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn from Councilmember Adams, second from Councilmember Keegan. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.